Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. With the colder temperatures we've seen, first hollow stem has been delayed across most of Oklahoma, but that's all about to change. If you haven't yet started scouting, now's a great time to start. We begin this week in Chickasha with our Southwest area agronomist, Heath Sanders.
First hollow stem is basically the wheat plant is going from a vegetative state into its reproductive state. Basically, that little head is starting to move from down really low and then start moving up through that stem. Much of our wheat that is planted in this area, in this state, is for dual purpose system. In order for this system to work, we really have to pay attention to the first hollow stem, and our environment and our weather influence this rapidly. You just never know with our weather. Up until the last week, we've had a little cold weather, but we've been pretty mild for the most part. We've had good moisture. We saw things started to rapidly change when we started seeing a few varieties go out, far as first hollow stem. This past week we've been really cold, and that's basically like just kind of hitting the pause button on what this wheat plant is going to do. As we start warming up towards the end of this week, and then as we get into 50s and 60 degree temperature, even in 70s, this crop's going to continue on at a real rapid pace. So we just really have to pay attention to our surroundings, our environment, and what varieties we have out there that we're grazing. So, going out and checking an ungrazed area, because when we check a grazed area, that maturity is already being delayed. We're checking for first hollow stem. The dime is a perfect. Generally someone has a dime in the pickup or in their pocket, and that's 1.5 centimeters, which is or roughly around a half an inch. When we get that hollow stem is above that quart or that dime, which is 1.5 centimeters, then that field or that variety has already hit first hollow stem. First hollow stem advisor provided with the Oklahoma Mesonet, and that is a great tool to basically kind of give you an idea of where you're at. Basically what it is modeling. It models the predictions. And so as the soil temperature increases, we can model a 1 week or a 2 week out and kind of see where we're going to be at. And as we start to see the changes on the map, 10, 20, 30%, that you may have a probability that you could see first hollow stem, we really have got to be out there checking that and making sure. Once we get to about 50% probability, then it's time to start pulling the calves off of it. First hollow stem is just kind of that point that you don't need anything to damage that wheat head. So if it's being bitten off by through a cow or calf, then that basically we start losing yield potential. If we go past that first week of first hollow stem, we're going to see an 8 to 10% yield reduction. As we go to that second week, we can see up to 30% or more. And that's why it is so important that we pull those calves off, allow recovery time in order for it to go to make grain, and not only grain, but for hay as well.
And it is that time of year when producers are out scouting for first hollow stem, but there are some things in the near future that producers should be looking for.
Yeah, most years this would be the time to start looking for diseases and insect pests, especially down in southern Oklahoma and into central Oklahoma. But this year it's been cold and our wheat was planted so much later last year, so a lot of it is really small, that it's not quite as imperative. But this is getting right on the edge of time for it to be looking for those insect pests and different diseases.
We've been fortunate with moisture across the state, and it is going to start warming up. Those are some of the things that that help spread diseases from the south, correct?
Definitely, especially because rusts have been reported, leaf rust has been reported in southern and central Texas. And as the temperatures warm and the winds start coming predominantly from the south, the spores will blow up here. It's going to depend not just on the moisture we have, but more so on rainfall and dews and things like that. But typically there are conditions favorable for the rusts especially to get going.
What should producers be looking for whenever they do head out to their fields scouting for that?
Well, at this time of year, they're going to have to get down on their hands and knees and look down low to see what's going on. As the wheat grows a little higher, a lot of times you can see a little bit of a different shaded green, kind of a yellowish green in there. If you really have severe rust going, those would be the kinds of things, but you're still going to have to get out in the field and look down in that canopy to see what's going on.
Just for the non-producer out there, why does rust cause a problem on the wheat plant?
Well, rust is what's called a biotrophic pathogen. It needs living tissue to live on, and it's kind of like when we get infected with a cold, that cold isn't going to kill us, but it's going to derive nutrition and replicate in us, so on and so forth. And that's what rust does on the plant. It derives its nutrition without really killing the plant outright. So it'll take nutrients from the plant. If you get a total leaf infection, which can occur, especially when it gets into the flag leaf, then you're not going to have near as much photosynthate or grain filling. You'll have shriveled kernels. Plant will lose more moisture. Just weakens the plant.
We're here on the agronomy farm at Oklahoma State in Stillwater, and have you seen any rust here where we are?
Well, we're actually in one of Dr. Brett Carver's nurseries called the DPON, Dual Purpose Observation Nursery, and you can see part of it has been mowed, and those are the entries that he's interested in rating. But in between those entries, he has these long strips of a very susceptible variety to leaf rust and stripe rust both, as well as powdery mildew, and that's what I come out and look at first, because when you get down into here and start looking, you can bring up leaves that, like that one, where you do see some of the rust pustules still live on it, and the little bit of the orangish color in there indicates sporulation and the fact that the rust spores are viable. A lot of those lower leaves are dead. Right. There's not much else going on down there, but there is definitely some leaf rust that has overwintered here. And that will serve as that initial inoculum to come up as well as temperatures warm, and hence we'll rely on dews and rainfall to provide the moisture to get further infection. But mostly it's the spores that blow up from Texas.
So on the lower levels where the leaves are dead or yellowed, that could contribute to future rust on these plants right here.
Oh yeah, it could. It could. Now the really dead leaves down low, they may have rust pustules on them, but those will be not alive because you can maybe see some a little bit in that dead area there. They're not going to provide inoculum because, as I said, it needs living tissue, so it's going to have to be on a partially live leaf yet.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob Hunger. And for more information on this, check out our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
We've spoken many times before on the Cow-Calf Corner about the importance of body condition of the cows at calving time, as it affects then their rebreeding performance during the following breeding season. And I certainly still believe that that's the most important determining factor. However, we do know from research that what happens between calving and the start of the breeding season in terms of the body condition of these cows can also have a pretty sizable influence on the rebreeding performance. Research done here in the 80s at Oklahoma State University shows you what can happen if cows are allowed to lose quite a little bit of body condition between calving and the start of the breeding season. What they looked at was a set of cows that were in what we would probably call good body condition for adult beef cows. Those in our 1 through 9 scoring system, they were a body condition score of a 5. Half of the cows were then fed to maintain that body condition during early lactation, going into and through the breeding season. The other half of the cows were allowed to lose a full body condition score between calving and the start of the breeding season. As they followed these cattle then through the following breeding season and then into the pregnancy testing the following fall, there was a sizable difference. Those cows that lost a full body condition between calving and the start of the breeding season rebred at a rate of 21% lower than did the cows that were fed to maintain their fatness or their body condition into and through the breeding season. In this particular experiment, the cows that maintained body condition rebred very well, 94%, as compared to those that lost the body condition down to 73%. We're in that time of the year where as we go from the calving season into the breeding season, we're in one of the toughest times in terms of nutritional challenges for these cows. The standing forage that's out in these native and Bermuda grass pastures is very low quality, what's left after we've gone through a winter. So it makes it even tougher to keep body condition on these cattle. The point that I think I'd like to make is that we need to try to provide a good quality hay for these cattle as well as the supplement and continue feeding it into and through the breeding season so that we maintain body condition on the cows as best we possibly can. Let's try to make sure they're not losing body condition between calving and the breeding season, and we'll be a lot happier next year when we find out which cows are open and which cows are pregnant. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Well, Bob Dylan once said, "Don't think twice, it's all right." And Kim, is this the feeling that producers should have with these declining wheat prices?
I don't think so. You look at what's going on in the wheat market, the wheat price just continues to go down. We've got the funds going short. We've got lack of export demand. I just don't know how low it's going to go before it hits that bottom and bounces back up.
So what's the condition with the 2019 wheat harvested forward contracts?
Well, if you look at the forward contract, let's just use Burlington, Tacoma area. You can forward contract right now for about $4.32 a bushel. Compare that to $5 and a nickel this same time last year. Now the basis on that 432 is a minus 10 cents compared to a minus 50 cents last year, so it's 40 cents better than it was last year. And it's based on the Kansas City July contract price, which this year is $4.32. Last year it was $5.01, or the forward contract price is 59 cents less than it was this time last year.
So why is the basis higher than the futures prices?
Well, I think that basis reflects the local condition. I think that the elevator wants that to buy that wheat at harvest. I think there's a domestic demand for that wheat as we get into harvest. I think that futures price, that lower price, reflects the lack of export demand. Plus we've had the funds come in. They continue to sell this market because of lack of demand. And I think the market is waiting and is not going to buy these contracts until export demand picks up. And with the things that's going on in the Black Sea area, that might be a while.
Well, speaking of exports, the World Trade Organization ruled against China. So what does that mean for Oklahoma?
I think it's a null event. If you look at China's imports of wheat, they've only imported about 107 million bushels. That's an average over the last 5 years. Of that, 85% of it's been hard red spring wheat, 15% of it's been white wheat, 0 hard red winter wheat. So since they don't, even if they did import hard red winter wheat, it'd be out of the Seattle or the western seaports, and that wheat would come out of the northern states.
So how should Oklahoma producers react to these lower prices?
Well, I think they've got to take a hard look at them. They've got to compare their allocation of land, labor, capital, and management. I think the one thing they can't afford to do is use these low prices as an excuse not to produce a quality product. I think they've got to get that nitrogen on there, get that protein and test weight up, produce a quality product, or they're going to lose another 50 cents to $1.
Quality is always important.
You bet.
All right, thanks, Kim. Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
In the 2011 sheep report that was done by the United States Department of Agriculture, it was found that 27.3% of all lambs that die in the first 3 weeks of life, those deaths are due to weather. Studies have shown that lambs that are exposed to extreme weather conditions are prone to getting hypothermia and hypoglycemia. Hypothermia occurs when the body fails to produce enough heat or the animal is losing too much heat, and usually it's a combination of both. A normal rectal temperature of a lamb is going to be around 102 degrees Fahrenheit with a range of 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. If we have a temperature of 99 degrees to 101 degrees, we'd consider that mild hypothermia. Anything below 99 degrees Fahrenheit is considered severe hypothermia. Factors that contribute to lambs being hypothermic are small lambs, lambs that have thin hair coats, lambs that get wet and don't get dry, or lambs that are born in very drafty conditions. Hypothermic lambs will appear weak, gaunt, and hunched up. In severe cases, these lambs will be down, they won't be able to stand, they usually can't lift their heads up. If you touch these lambs, their ears will be cold, their mouth will be cold, and they'll lack a suckle reflex. These lambs need to be warmed up. There are a variety of ways to warm them up. Hot boxes, where we have a box that has a heating source, are very nice ways to warm them up. These can be made or they can be purchased. Placing hot water bottles around lambs is another good idea. Using heating pads. I know people have even used hair dryers to get these lambs warmed back up. Hot water baths are really nice ways to warm animals up, but you need to be careful when it comes to lambs, because if you wash the scent off that lamb, you may not be willing to accept that lamb back when you try to put it back with its mother. We talk about hypothermia, but hypoglycemia usually is a sequel to hypothermia, and this is just a low blood sugar. So when you find these lambs, a lot of them are going to need to be fed. Normally the way we're going to do that is either going to tube feed them, and in severe cases we may need to give these guys some type of form of sugar, glucose or dextrose in the form of an intraperitoneal injection or an IV injection. Both of these, tube feeding a lamb or an intraperitoneal or IV injections, are two techniques that you can master. I would strongly suggest that you talk with your veterinarian and get him or her to help you learn these techniques, and keep a close eye on them again, because you've got to make sure they nurse, or you're going to be right back in the same situation again. If you'd like some more information about hypothermia and hypoglycemia, just go to sunup.okstate.edu.
We are talking trade and tariffs now with Larry Sanders, our extension economist and ag policy specialist. And Larry, this is in the news quite often. Why don't you just kind of start with an overview and get us all up to speed?
Sure. Well, people know that President Trump has set tariffs on China to try to get them in line with some of their missteps, perhaps, in trade. And those trade talks have been continuing to try to reduce the tariffs or prevent more. The president had originally given a March 1 deadline, but he was satisfied with the progress, so those trade talks are now ongoing.
What, I think the big question for a lot of Oklahoma producers and beyond, what's at stake really for agriculture in the United States?
Yeah, we had a record trade deficit with China for 2018. That means we bought more from them than they bought from us. And a big part of that was drops in agriculture. China is our #1 market for soybeans, for feed, for hides, for alfalfa. It's our #2 market. For hay, it's our #3 market. For dairy and poultry, it's our #4 market. For processed foods, beef and pork, and it's our #5 market for wheat, depending on which year we're looking at. So all of those are at risk of losing market share over there.
Some really important, business that goes on, of course. What's at stake meantime for China?
Well,
Depending on where you're standing, and us in the United States, we feel that China has been taking unfair advantage of our intellectual property rights, our trade secrets. They sometimes want to know things that we would prefer to sell to them, so when a business gets over there, they try to get those things. And they also are manipulating their currency, so their products are relatively cheaper on the world market than ours are. So we are buying more from them at this time, and the United States doesn't like that. And all of that is for them to have economic growth. They want it to continue, but we want them to do it in a fair way.
Right. What is next in all of this, in your opinion?
Well, I think that we're probably going to see a trade agreement eventually within the next month or two. China is going to say that they're going to come in line. The problem is we don't have any very good enforcement mechanisms. And history says China is notorious for not honoring trade agreements, keeping their word. And so probably down the road somewhere, we're probably going to have to file a dispute claim with the World Trade Organization.
That accountability part of the picture, there's a lot in the news, a lot to keep up with. What is it important to, kind of keep on our radars moving forward?
Well, we know that President Trump signed the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement last year. Congress has yet to approve that. We know that informally is NAFTA 2.0, so agriculture's benefited greatly by the original NAFTA, and we don't want to see us lose that opportunity. We backed out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The remaining 11 countries have moved forward without us, and they're reducing tariffs, and we may lose a bit of market share in the Pacific Rim if that moves forward without us, and it looks like it will. We've reinitiated trade talks with Europe, and in particular England, because of Brexit, and there's some contention there because they don't want to lower their tariffs on our automobiles. So we'll probably see some fireworks down the road there as well.
Well, we appreciate your analysis, and of course keep us up to speed as everything develops. Thanks a lot, Larry.
Hi, Wes Lee with your weekly Mesonet weather report. Cool temperatures continued to be the main weather topic this past week as a near record-breaking cold front moved across the state. Statewide, high temperatures have been below average now for most of the day since Valentine's Day. On Monday, March 4th, daily highs were a whopping 35 degrees below the long-term average. This weekend, we should finally move back slightly above the average high for this time of year of about 62 degrees. We discussed wheat first hollow stem a few weeks ago on SUNUP. If we look at the maps now, we see a lot has changed since then. The early varieties map shows most of the state to be red, where they are likely to be at a 50% or more chance of first hollow stem. The middle varieties map indicates that about a bottom third of the state has reached red, where first hollow stem is likely occurring. The late varieties map just shows pockets of red in southern Oklahoma. We recommend scouting individual fields when the maps indicate a 5% probability for your variety in your area. Next up, Gary is going to talk more about the winter temperatures.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, as usual, we have some good news and we have some bad news. And the bad news usually comes in the form of the Drought Monitor Map. So let's take a look at that. As you can see, we still have those abnormally dry conditions persisting across far western Oklahoma up into the eastern panhandle, and that little bit of moderate drought down in far southwestern Oklahoma. Now for the good news. We see next week we do have increased odds of above normal precipitation, greatly increased odds in fact. Looks like we might get a pretty decent rainstorm in here. That would be great news for that area across western Oklahoma. So hopefully we can cut some of that yellow color off the map and get rid of the drought altogether. Now we have an interesting take on the winter. Climatological winter runs from December through February. If we look at the air temperature maps from the Oklahoma Mesonet for the winter months, we see the average air temperature across the state is generally close to normal. Some places a little bit above, some places a little bit below. But overall across the state, generally we had a normal winter temperature-wise. Now let's take another look at that from the minimum and maximum temperatures. So our minimum temperatures for the winter months were above normal across the state, from 1 to 2 degrees. Some places about normal, some places a little bit more than that 1 to 2 degrees. And our maximum temperatures, those were below normal, from 1 to sometimes 3 degrees below normal. So you average those minimum and maximum temperatures together, you end up with a pretty much normal winter temperature-wise. So just a little bit of interesting science there from the Mesonet maps. Now hopefully we can get some good rains in here this coming week and keep that drought at bay across western Oklahoma and get everybody ready for spring. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.